Good morning, welcome to our live talk program. This is Lloyd Garber here, your host on Revive Reform Radio, doing our live talk program covering the importance of church. And this year, Tuesday morning, rise and shine and give God the glory. And this morning here, we're looking at a topic, the nation continued separation from God. The nation continued separation from God. So this is our live talk program this morning as we look at the importance of church. So welcome, top of the morning to you here. Hopefully you had a blessed night rest and ready to take on the challenges and the opportunities of this day. Let us pray. Our Father who art in heaven, I thank you for the blessings of this day. I thank you for the blessings of your word. The blessings of the way you continue to guide us and reveal your ways and your truths to us and to show us, dear Lord, what's happening now and in the future. May you bless us, dear Lord, as we continue to be people of the book of prophecy. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. So again, I'm looking here at this topic of this article. I want to share with you some continued developments going on in our society when it has to do with morality and legality. And so I'm going to talk to you about something going on with the adoption agencies and the legal lawsuits there that has to relate to gay couples or homosexual couples adoption children. So again, my topic is the nation continued separation from God. Welcome again. So I'll start off by reading 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 8 through 10. 1 Peter chapter 2 verse 8 through 10. And it says, "And a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense, even to them which stumble at the word, being disobedient, whereunto also they were appointed. But ye are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, an holy nation, a peculiar people, that ye should show forth the praises of him which hath called you out of darkness into his marvelous light, which in time past were not a people, but are now the people of God, which had not obtained mercy, but now have obtained mercy." So here the Bible says that what we preach and who we follow is a stone of stumbling and a rock of offense. The truth, no matter what you do, is going to be an offensive thing because choices has to be made, and those who walk in darkness will be offended by it. That's just the reality. The problem is that it's this boldness and this aggressiveness that we see continued where there's no exception, there's no accommodation given. Somebody says, "This is my religious stance. I cannot work. I physically can work on the Sabbath, but I choose not to because I obey the Bible." And there is opportunity for accommodation. The person's like, "We will not accommodate you," and put you under pressure. This is the attitude of the society. But by doing that, they make a stance that causes them to become more hardened and recalcitrant against any type of accommodation for anything that they don't agree with. And this is where the society is going. And as you know, this is where that's where it's going to go. And as it goes there, and that's where it will end. And this is the problem. And so we're seeing this in so many different instances as the community and the society talks about equality and justice and all these things. They become more aggressive against anyone that have a moral stance against anything. So this is why I wanted to talk about this, because I see this as a continued development that most people seem to not be aware of where we're going to end. So in Revelation chapter 13, as my topic again is the nation continued separation from God. In Revelation chapter 13, the Bible says here, "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had two horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon." So this is describing America in prophecy. And it says America is unique in a sense that it is a beast. It's a political per se entity. It's a secular nation. It's a beast, In Revelation 17, it describes the Italian system and says it's, or the European system, and it says it's red. Red normally means it's a bloody beast, a bloody entity, a bloody or you call it nation or nationalities. Anyhow, here you just simply describe as a beast. It doesn't give a particular description. It doesn't say it has spots or anything. It just simply says it's a beast. And it has two powers in it, one represented by Protestantism, one represented by Republicanism. And these two entities, in their statements of purpose, seems like a lamb or looks like a lamb. They're like a lamb. You're like, oh, that's so calm and docile and will be led anywhere. But when it speaks like the dragon, or speak like the whole serpent, which is in Revelation chapter 12. And out of it speak, but the speaking of it represent the legalities, the what is coming down from the Senate and the Congress and the White House, and the even speaking coming from the pulpits across the land. If you listen to pastors nowadays, they're warmongers, they're not pastors. And as they speak, the sound of what they speak, or the legislations they pass, are legislation that is from the devil. And this has been the case of America from the onset. But the Bible predicts that it will get worse. It will not just speak per se, but it will do all of the manner of things. And from slavery to Jim Crow law to the continuous war. I think I was reading somewhere they said America, as for all its 200 and something years of existence, I think only 10% or less of the time in existence, it has not been at war. Constant war. And most of those wars, especially the last set of wars that it has done, it has been preemptive strikes. So notice here, it says in verse 12 that he exercised all the power of the first beast before him, and caused the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. This is now pointing forward to a time when the total healing of the wound that was given to the Catholic Church in 1798 has happened. So it caused them to worship that beast. So the worship goes to the beast, the first beast of Revelation 13. Now this is important for what I'm going to read next, because what's happened, we know that although things are a certain way, seem to escalate and get worse. And I believe we're in that time period where we're witnessing the worst. Things have always been bad, but we're witnessing that in so many facets of life, things are just getting so out of control. So that's something we're witnessing. And I will skip, because this is not my focus for this morning here. I want to talk about this thing that's going on across the land when it comes on to adoption and equal rights and justice for all. So I read verse 15 downward, and it says here, and he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. So this is what we call the force of worship. So it's one thing when, say for instance, as I'm going to cover here, say you're in business and somebody force your hand. Say you have a bread and breakfast, and two homosexuals come in and say they want to stay at your bed and breakfast, and you're like, no. And then the state comes in and, shut you down or confiscate your business or sue you into bankruptcy. So you're forced out. So you're no longer doing business, and, you have to live like the martyrs of whole and the pilgrims of whole. So that's good. But they come to a point where they're not satisfied. This is what the Bible is predicting here, that it's going to come to a point where the society in general will not be satisfied with this, and they want to go a step further, which is to punish you if you don't worship according to their ways. This is coming, and as I said, the whole congealed mass will come together. Because remember, it's important to think that even though the Catholic Church might say they're anti-homosexual, they're the biggest purveyor and cause of homosexuality in America, and I would say the world over. Think about all those little boys that were raped, by the thousands and thousands of Catholic priests, that their first initial experience with homosexuality or sexuality was with a man and with a priest. And so that's their initial. So their thoughts going forward is going to be greatly affected about sex, because they're going to be thinking sex. When they think sex, they're going to think it with a man. Think about all these young girls who their first sexual experience with our period was with none. So this is where I think the struggle is trying to understand how this is going to go together, because often, as I'm going to read, it seems like the Catholic Church is for certain things, but while they're for it, they're also against it. It's just you take a topic, they're for and against. This is why the Bible calls it Babylon. It's confusion. And so, but I think as we go forward, what will be seen more and more, why I cover topics like this, and it might be strenuous for others to listen to, is that the whole mass is going to come together. Because remember, if you ask which church is which church is the biggest advocate against abortion, the answer would be the Catholic Church. Which church is the largest causer, their members and their clergy, for abortion? The answer would be Catholic. So somebody say, well, that's confusing. Then you go to the Bible and the Bible says, well, that's Babylon for you. It's massive confusion. Which church seem to be the biggest with foreign missions? And you would say, oh, like Baptist and Methodist. Well, which church is the biggest purveyor of racism? Well, Baptist and Methodist. So somebody said, well, that's confusing. I said, there you go. You can understand why God says Babylon. This is very confusing. It is weird, which church, which members in the United States churches would be the most advocate for freedom. You would say like people from the Southern Baptist. Which church has been the most aggressive to taking away people's freedom and murdering people? You would say the Southern Baptists. So that's why this is so important to understand what the Bible is saying, because often we're trying to make sense, whether we read in the media or whether we're studying the Bible, of what the Bible is calling Babylon or confusion. It is very confusing stance. You say which church is most prominent in promoting the cross of Christ, and you say the Catholic Church. Which church is the most prominent in killing martyrs? According to Pope John Paul, it was the Catholic Church. So you say that's kind of strange. All we hear about is the cross, the cross, the cross. Lift the cross up, and pictures of crucifix and all that. And then you read that and then you hear, well, who killed all the martyrs? Oh, the Catholic Church. Well, that's strange. So that's why a lot of these things is so confusing, because it's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with, as Christ called it, hypocrisy. But this is hypocrisy to high heaven. I read verse 16 and it says, and he caused it all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark on his right hand and his forehead. So this is where even Ellen G. White says, to the regular human mind, this seems impossible. Somebody said, it is impossible for the United States of America to lead out in the persecution of the righteous and to go against anyone that is a moral person and force them to worship against the dictate of their conscience. Because America, number one selling point is freedom. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of all kind of stuff. Freedom to be weird. So this sounds, somebody said, that's why somebody was like, what are you talking about? Well, again, I'm going to read this article and this will illustrate the duplicity. Because remember, somebody would say, oh, freedom, freedom, freedom. America is about freedom. Freedom is like apple pie. But which country had the most barbaric slavery? It was the United States of America. As a matter of fact, Ellen G. White says it was the most barbaric slavery known to humanity. For 6,000 years of war and oppression, no other country had become and take it to this level. They say basically, after Haiti industrialized slavery, America took it to another level. Like they say, hold my beer. I'm going to show you what I can do. And this is what it is. It's fascinating. It is that's what the Bible says is so beautifully. This is why inspiration is so powerful. I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, but he spake as a dragon. What a description. And we look at American history, you're like, whoa, that's so powerful. I mean, every time I look at the news, I was like, man, what an inspiration. 2,000 years ago, manuscripts have been found to prove that this statement we just read was written by John on the Isle of Patmos 2,000 years ago. It's been historically proven. It can't be disputed anymore. It was written. And for him to write that 2,000 years ago, here we are. What a description. You love freedom, but you had Jim Crow law. Love freedom, but war and drugs, and the black community decimated. Love freedom. Think about it. You call it free trade. What is free trade? Free trade is simply trade. When black people got civil rights, they started to come up with this concept of free trade so that they could empty all the jobs out of the black communities. So yeah, you got freedom, but you have no job. Boom. Speaking like the dragon. So we continue. I will go over to this article. So I want to say all that massive what I just said so that you understand the context of this confusion I'm going to read right here with the three entities that will persecute God's people in the end. Notice here, Michigan bars Christian adoption agencies from refusing LGBT couples after legal settlement. This is taken from Christian Post by Samuel Smith. Adoption and foster care agencies in Michigan who contract with the state can no longer refuse to place children with qualified same-sex partners or parents over religious reasons, thanks to a legal settlement Friday that some fear will put faith-based agencies out of business. Democrat Attorney General Dana Nessel and the two same-sex couple represented by the American Civil Liberties Union came to a legal agreement that a 2005 law allowing religious-based adoption agencies to refuse adoption services to same-sex couple violated federal criminal law. The agency, and I might pause there, Democratic Attorney General Dana Nessel herself is a lesbian. Her wife is a wife. That makes sense? She's a female and her wife is a wife. So she's a lesbian couple herself. The agreement settled a federal complaint filed in 2017 after the couple were refused service by St. Vincent Catholic Charity and Bethany Christian Services. So one Christian and one Catholic charity adoption agencies. Discrimination in the provision of foster care, case management, and adoption services is illegal, no matter the rationale, Nessel said in a statement. Limiting the opportunity for a child to be adopted or fostered by a loving home not only goes against the state's goal of finding a home for every child, it is a direct violation of the contract every child placed in agency enter into with the state. So again, she has two sons. She and her wife have two sons also. So they, I guess, I don't know if they adopt or they did it vaginally. Under its non-discrimination provision, agencies looking to partner with the state cannot turn away or refuse the same-sex couple or individual who is suitable to foster or adopt a child. Agencies that violate such provision could have their contract terminated. A summary of the agreement states that when an adoption or foster agency accepts a referral of a child for foster or adoption care from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, its legal protection ensure its rights to refuse to work with a same-sex couple because of deeply held religious belief no longer applies to the agency's provision of these services to the accepted child or individual. In a summary of the agreement, it was claimed that Title IVE funded programs prohibited discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation or gender identity. It should be noted, however, that sexual orientation and gender identity are not protected classes in federal civil rights law, and there is a push right now among Democrats in Congress to pass a law that would make those protected class. So for clarity and just for repeat here, so currently under the current law, sexual orientation and gender identity are not protected classes in federal civil rights, but I guess in the state they are protected classes. The ACLU, a far-right a Forest or a Left nonprofit advocacy group, ACLU group, celebrate the settlement. Quote, "We are thrilled that the state of Michigan has committed to ensure that all of the agencies it hires to find families for children in state custody comply with its non-discrimination requirement so that the children do not lose out on families to care for them." Leslie Cooper, Deputy Director of the ACLU LGBT HIV project, said in a statement, "Our children need every family that is willing and able to provide them with a loving home. When agencies choose to accept taxpayers' dollar to provide public child welfare service, they put the needs of the children first." Critics fear that the settlement could force faith-based adoption agencies to close. Lori Winham, senior counsel at the nonprofit Religious Freedom Law firm Beckett, which represented St. Vincent Catholic Charities, argued that Nessel and the ACLU are working to stop the state from working with faith-based adoption agencies. The result of that will be tragic. Thousands of children will be kept from finding the loving homes they deserve, Winham explained. This settlement violates the state law protecting religious adoption agencies. This harm children and families waiting for forever home, I guess I spell that right, and limits access for couples who choose to partner with those agencies. The agreement also also criticized Republican Michigan Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey. Dana Nessel has shown us that she cares little for the Constitution and even less for the vulnerable population of children in need of forever home. I guess that's what they call it, forever home. Nessel action makes it clear that she sought the office of Attorney General to further her own personal political agenda. The legislature wrote and passed a law regarding adoption practices in Michigan to both protect religious freedom and guard against discrimination. Shirkey stated that faith-based adoption agencies comprise at least 25% of licensed agencies in the state. He fears that the new agreement will put an end of those organizations, which probably is a good thing. As a result, there will be fewer advocates working in place to place children in loving homes. He contends Nessel apparently disagrees with the law for the law of our state, the Constitution, and the well-being of thousands of children is an affront to all citizens. In a tweet, Michigan Catholic Conference argued that the settlement does not protect the thousands of children in foster care looking for a loving home. As such, it is highly unlikely this is the last chapter in the story. And they go on to various different ways this thing had passed with various different governors. So from one governor to the next, there's been various different laws. Towards the end here, it says also in upstate New York, Catholic Charities of Buffalo ended its adoption and foster service last August over conflicts with the state and local non-discriminatory policy. Bethany Christian Services of Greater Delaware Valley changed its policy last year to allow for children to be placed in same-sex couples after Philadelphia city government stopped placing foster children with them and with the Catholic groups. Instead of changing its policy, Catholic Service filed a lawsuit over it was not victorious in federal court. In years past, faith-based adoption and foster care serve agencies in states such as Illinois, Massachusetts, California, Washington, and DC have had to halt their adoption services over policies on gay adoption. So this is an ongoing development. I'm sure you have heard about it. That has been happening across the United States with these adoption agencies. Now, there's a few points here that I think is important in this development. These agencies are working with the federal government and the state government. They're taking funding. As you know, I believe in the separation of separation of church and state. I believe that no agency should be taking taxpayer dollar to do anything, nothing, because when you're dealing with this type of stuff, it start to become very problematic. Like you're doing services where you're taking these kids and placing them. Now the problem is when the many people worry about it. It's like I always say, it's like a parent who is dealing with a child who has drugs, a drug problem, and they have a tough decision to make because they know they can, they can stop being an enabler, and the child would just hit rock bottom real fast and could even die. But if they continue being an enabler, the child will ultimately die anyhow. And I've never heard about an enabler, a child being enabled or spoiled that didn't fall and crumble. So that's the problem with this. So some people say, well, they have to work with it. Now, I for one, I've never worked with one of these agencies. And so I'm going to state this clear. Whatever I'm saying next, it's not like I manage or run one of these agencies, so I know every single inner working. But the problem with taking state-funded dollars is that you have to go by the law of the state. And as I read to you, the law of the state is not the law of Christ. It might sounds good, like the state might make certain statement and it sound like they're for freedom and whatever. So you start to work with them, but you find out that the laws they have on the books are not laws that Christ would pass. Those are laws that the dragon would pass. So working with them and taking their money is like you're making a deal with the devil. And now you make that deal, and now you're going to have to do what? Do this type of stuff. And now you have, anybody can be voted into office, and they can say, this is the rule you work by. And now you have a system in place that you now have to protect, and you have to decide either to shut the system down or to work with the rule that the devil just made. So that's the problem, and that's why it's better to stay at a secular business and stay away from this type of stuff and not tie religious organization to church. What the religious organization have done is that, to me, they have done what the Bible says. They have sold themselves to the devil. They have made a pact, and now many of them have to decide either to close, which is the right thing to do, to shut down the service altogether, or to stay in line and basically become an arm of, say, this lady here, who she's herself is a lesbian, and she's adopted, I guess, kids, or I don't know if she did vaginal birth or whatever, or C-section. She did artificial insemination or what. But now you have to work with this person, and this person has an agenda, just like with the Christian have an agenda. We all have an agenda. But her agenda is something that's going to make more and more the society Sodom. And so you have to figure out how to, now I don't know the answer for that, how to work outside of the state system when it comes on the kids. And I think that the process should be, I think, since you have all this type of free sex with members in the church and all these kids that are being born by either somebody, daughter or son, who's going wayward, that you should just start a Christian adoption agency that will place kids under the permission of their parents. And at least you could be busy yourself doing that type of work. That means the society should know that there is a competing agency that will place the kids under the permission, so the parents write the kids over to whoever is going to adopt, and the agency just there as an intermediary, and it is going under the permission. In other words, instead of saying to that child, leave the child, saying to that kid that having a child, don't leave the child under the control of the state. Turn it over to the church and let the church find suitable people, and don't take no money. Run the agency independent of the state money, and cut the state out of the deal altogether. It just means that we're gonna have to put the Christians and Catholics who are doing this type of stuff would have to put their money where their mouth is. Instead of wasting time with these lawyers and doing this suit, just do an independent system. Just say, look, we represent a smaller percentage, 25% of the adoption agency. We work outside of the system. You have a child, before you put the child in the microwave, just turn the child over to us and we'll find a home for them. Before you take the child and throw it off of a bridge, just give that child to us. We'll take it. And there's enough free sex people out there that if you have a reputable, established agency, that they will trust. And so then you don't have to worry about placing a child with a homosexual couple. The only way to do this type of stuff is this step. It's the same thing with education. If you say you want to do a school, you just don't do a charter school or a voucher school. You just do a totally independent school, because as the nation divorces itself from God, what you're going to find that the laws and rules are going to get more draconian and more vicious. So you don't want to take money from this type of entity. You want to be totally separate. When we're talking about church, anything to do with anything that says religion or faith or church has to be separated from anything to do with the government. Cannot. If you're giving out food, you cannot take money from the government. It's just anything you do. If you just say you're just running, say, a food pantry, and that's all it is. Those food pantries of greater, New York. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with faith. It has nothing to do with God. It's just food for the poor and the hungry. But the moment you slap on it, faith, religion, Bible, owned by church, run by church, you can't take a dime from the state. But if it's just a general thing you're running, it's just a business or operation, you run it, you can take money from the state. And you can run by the state rules and you don't have to feel no compromise. But that's where I think the problem is. So we're seeing this, and that's what I said. The first thing I want to say there, it's the state. This is the thing. The state is the issue. Because the state has a mandate to serve the voters, and the state is in a situation where the state is not doing wrong, so to speak. In the sense that the politician is put in power by the voters to carry out the will of the people. Remember, it's a government for the people, by the people. So the government and the elected official is in office to serve all the people that voted for and if even voted against, so to speak. Well, that's just reality. And so if the person is in power and the electorate is everybody, that's the person's responsibility. The person's responsibility is that everybody is served. It might not work in reality because there's a lot of hypocrisy, but that's just the stated rule. So the person is in power. The tax dollars that they collect, including your tax dollar and my tax dollar, has to be used for all the purposes that the state designed. It's not my choice or your choice where our dollars go. Because somebody said, well, wait a minute, but aren't Christians paying tax too? Yeah, that Christ says, give unto Caesar what is Caesar. Now, doesn't Caesar use the tax to even, pass rules that are anti-Christ? Yeah. Caesar was no friend of Christ. Caesar didn't run things and have God in his mind. Caesar has Caesar in his mind. But Caesar takes the tax. Caesar doesn't, I don't give the tax per se. I do it willingly, but it's not like I would want Caesar to run a business like that. Caesar is taking care of certain things, and Caesar look at this as a very good thing, that everybody should be treated equal. And Caesar now is trying to treat everybody equal. Caesar now here in this situation is a female, and she now is already a homosexual. She gonna take care of her own people, and she gonna use your tax dollars. At least if you're I've seen who listened to me here this morning, but if you're listening to me from Michigan, she's taking your tax dollars to sue these charities to place kids. Equal rights. That's really their responsibility. You can't really say that she shouldn't do it, because she should, in essence. So that's the problem. So you look at it this way. You could ask for accommodation, but there's other option. You exercise all options are on the table. And as you eliminate options in your life, then you have to face hard facts. And the hard fact to me is just, I don't believe in these charities. I believe they should have been set up with the funding from those who believe. And they should set up in a way that they are placing independent of the state money. and the state operation, they're getting the permission from the parent directly. And as I say, inbox me if there's something I'm not understanding. But they're getting, they should be getting the money, the permission from the parent directly, and then go to the people and the public and say, we have somebody to place, we screen you. And in this way, they could quote unquote discriminate, but it's their business because they got the permission directly. They're not going to no state. The child wasn't placed in the state, and then the state is going to dole out the child. The child was placed in the church control or an arm of the church, and then they're going to distribute the child where they need to distribute the child. I'm saying it cold because there seems to be no love in this. So the child comes in, and then the child is distributed to a family of this, whatever the institution choice. Because remember, one of the largest group, or probably the largest group in the society that contribute to foster care is the Catholic system, because the amount of people being raped and being getting pregnant. And there's back in the past, they used to have, if a white girl got pregnant by a black guy, they would try to foster out the child. So this was going on in their house. So if something is going on in your house and you're already doling out these kids, then just help your own charity and use your own money. You owe the kids for all the priest abuse that went on, to at least farm them out and so forth. So that's why I believe that should have happened, if you know what I mean. When all these, this is one of the dominant religion in the country. Both of them, the Christian group, the Protestant group, and the Catholic group. So this is what it is, and then you establish yourself in a society that you're an adoption agency that will try to place the child in the best possible scenario, because it's saying, because it's a loving home. But like, what's that? There's more to it than that. Come on. So this is the reality to me here. It is this idea that, to me, you respect the separation of church and state. You always hold it as sacred because it's a protection from Caesar also. It's almost like you say, look, I'm going to live peaceful in this world. I'm going to give Caesar to take care of his business, his money, and I'm separated from Caesar. I have nothing to do with Caesar when it comes on to religion. In my personal life and in my whatever, I separate it out. This is church. It's separated from Caesar. This is Caesar. You give Caesar. And so in this situation, you give Caesar its due. If Caesar has a child that's been left because the parents dropped dead without giving permission, you just turn over you just like, that's Caesar business, a Caesar child. But say a parent had a clause in their will that if they die, the child get turned over to, say, an institution within the church. Say they're driving on the road and an accident happened. Boom, that should be the church's business. Now that child is not turned over to Caesar, and Caesar is going to direct that this child, because think about it, the cruelty of a lady like Nessel. Say the child grew up in a Christian home, the parent dropped dead for some reason. She can decide, or she has decided, let's take this Christian child and send it to 2 homosexual men or 2 homosexual women who believe in no God, and now this child is going to be brought up pagan. So there's more at stake than just placing a child in a loving home. Like, what's that? 2 people live in no moral think they're loving, have no morality. So this could be the issue. So the issue is, stuff happen, accidents happen all the time. You could have 2 people have Christian values and belief, and they die of drug overdose. Happen all the time. But their wish, even while they're on the drugs, taking the drugs, was not for their child to be placed into 2 pagans with 2 infidels. Their choice would be, let's make my child get placed with 2 Christians. But now they die without, say, a will and no last will and testament and no directive. Now the child is with even 2 family members who are non-Christian. And so what happened to that child? So I think that should be something that should be rectified out, because it can't be taken care of by the state. It can't be, because that's the responsibility of the state to just do what they claim is the legality of a secular society. Remember, these states or these beasts, as the Bible described them, they're just secular society. They're not Christian society. I think the difficulty in understanding Revelation 13, verse 11 onwards, is that Christians view America as a Christian state, but it's just a secular state. It just pretend to have certain religious view, but it's secular people. What do you expect from secular people? Secular people are going to do what secular people are going to do. You know, that's just reality. I think if you have a dog, you should have a will and testimony for the dog, just in case you die by accident. At least, the dog get placed with a Christian home. Because secular people are going to do what they do with dogs. So you want to even have your dog taken care of. That's just the reality. If something happened to me, I'd want you to place me with a Christian home. It's just the same thing, because I don't want to be treated by these people. They treat themselves horrible. So this is just the reality. So here we have a situation that clearly, now going back to my topic, which is the nation continued separation from God, is as you look at this, you find that as people fall out of church, because this is what we're talking about, the importance of church. As people step away from church and God, and even the ones that still go to church, you see the churches they go to and hear the sermons they listen to, people are becoming more secular, more pagan, more immoral. And as that happens, we're seeing the result, and we're seeing who's being voted into office on both sides. You see, and this is where it says it's called Babylon. It's confusing, because you could say, oh, the conservatives, they're voting to people into secular office. Who they're voting into a secular office? They're voting people in the secular office who are sleeping with whores and prostitutes and porn stars and stuff like that. So on both sides, so what do you expect when you hear rules and laws to oppress the poor, to hate on strangers, to beat up those who are oppressed, to attack nations? You can't be shocked. You got to say, well, who is in office? That's why when I see an article like this, I don't even think about it. I go and I say, who is the Attorney General? I just do a Google search, and I just check it, and I'm like, okay, she have a wife. Makes sense. As I even read, I'm telling you, I do this. You read an article and there's a pastor in there touting some madness. Go do a search on him, and you'll never be shocked. He's speaking madness in one article. You realize he's off the wall. He's a mad person. That's what you have to expect. So when we talk about the nation separating or getting more secularized, we're literally talking about the decline of church. Less people going to church, and the churches that are flourishing are party church. Rarely, and I say rarely because I don't know of an instance, rarely can you see or cite a church that is a righteous church where the pastor preaching righteous and the church is flourishing. Rarely. And I say rarely because there's always exception to the rule. I've never seen one. You probably see one. I don't know. I don't know of any. In no denomination, including even Seventh Adventists, I've not seen one. It's normally the congregation dwindles. It's like Christ's ministry when he was healing, and he started doing some preaching, but mostly healing and doing all kind of miracles. His number soared. As he started preaching more serious, his number dwindled. Before his death, his number was his ministry was basically almost decimated. Even 70 preachers that was preaching with him, separate from 11, basically abandoned ship before he even got crucified. You can't be preaching powerful and there's like a whole horde of people. So when we look at what's going on in the nation, what we see, the churches that are preaching party, church, there's like a jump up church and make a lot of noise. They're packed to the rafters, literally like in the story of Samson, being ready to be destroyed. When you look at the churches that are in general, the generic churches that the pastor is not entertaining the people, they're empty. Just dead, empty churches. Nobody going. Because the people have left the church. They have left morality and religion. So now you take those same people and you say, vote for somebody and they say we go vote for the most immoral person that basically suits our purpose. We're going to vote for warmongers. We're going to vote for whoremongers. We're going to vote for weirdos. We're going to vote for perverts. And this is what you look at when you look at most of what we call legislators. On both sides, this is why there's always these conservative coming out of the closet and going into the bathrooms of international airports and trying to, get men to sleep with them in the bathroom or to have sodomy in the bathroom. This is the type of stuff that's going on. So it's important for us to understand this. So when we see the nation moving and we say, well, but these are conservatives or these are Democrats, man, it's the same thing. This is called Babylon. It's confusion. It's a whole mass of confusion. And this is what's happening. It's important for you to understand it. That's why it's so confusing. When you see even recently we have seen Joe Boehner, I think his name was, John Boehner, after he leave being a conservative leader for many years. He was a regular tobacco smoker. Then he retires from being the Speaker of the House. I think he came from Ohio or Indiana, somewhere over there. And then he's now an advocate for marijuana. Somebody said, but I thought he was conservative and the religious folk loved him. I'm like, that's the point. This is Babylon. This is confusion. And so this is why when you see this type of stuff, you got to know that anything you build or anything you do, the moment you tack on the words church, religion, anything like that, faith-based, you got to be independently run. You got to separate that. All the money has to come from church folk, religious folk. Can't take any money from the state. The state is being run by infidels. And that's just the reality. So someone said, but aren't they Christian? As I said, there's always exception to the rule. There's 400 and some people in Congress. I'm sure one or two of them that claim religion is serious. There's 100 people in the Senate. I'm sure one or two of them in there are serious about following Jesus. But for the most part, you have 100 people and they're going to vote for legislation and you're one or two Christian. You can know where the good vote is going to come. So notice here again, this is the state going after charities. They go after two right here in Michigan. One is Catholic, one is Christian. And they won. And now these charities either have to close shop or change their policy. One is considering against closing shop. The other is considering, or they're going to terminate the contract anyhow. So whatever they do. And so one already decided to change his policy. And they're going to place the kids in quote-unquote loving homosexual homes. This is what they're going to do. And the program here again was funded by the government. This is why I say this is a problem. The ACLU is onto this because the ACLU, again, their right is to try to maintain, I guess, or fight for liberties. So the American Civil Liberties Union. So they say the liberties or the freedom of homosexual is being trampled upon. Technically, according to law, it's true. Their liberties are being trampled. They have a right to be able to access any service that is being offered at the state level or the federal level. And their right is being trampled upon. So they want that right. This is what I'm saying. If you're going to do something that has anything to do with something like that, and you think it's immoral. That means if you run an agency like this, you think it's a moral imperative. If you can't get money from the church, shut it down. Let the state take over those kids and send those kids to whatever. As a matter of fact, I think as a church, I think a lot of things has to be in-house. I don't even know if you need to have a state do this. Just sign over the child to the pastor of the church and say, you go find a parent to go adopt these kids. I'm telling you, you know my name. Lloyd Grubb, sign the child over to me. I'll find a house, whatever. I'd prefer that than for the child to go to a state agency. Or I'll house the child myself. I'm sure my wife is listening this morning. She'll agree. So I prefer that than a child to go to a state agency and get signed over to some crazy off the wall, rapper family or rock and roll family or some crazy devil worshiper or some. I mean, just think about what some of these kids are being signed over to. Because although we're talking about LGBT, uh, you probably have some of these LGBT people probably do better parenting than some of these craziness that we see that's saying they're adopting kids. Adopting what? They can't even adopt themselves. I know so many people, they can't even take care of themselves, much like taking care of kids. And yet they're going to want to adopt. You know, can't even feed themselves. They have already enough kids and they're drowning in debt and in confusion and all kind of can't discipline the kid, can't do anything. The kids are going to come out to be menace to society, and yet they want to adapt. So again, you know, sign it over to somebody in the church. You don't need an adoption, whatever, to do that. I just believe that's just the problem. You have a child and the child want to give up the child for a adoption. Just sign over to the name of the church. And let the church figure it out. Throw it on the church. But to send it out there because I say, send it into the homosexual thing. Yeah, that's a big issue. And I'm not belittling the issue. But as I say, there's many homes that you wouldn't want that child to be signed over to. Come on. Why would you want the child to be signed over to certain crazy homes? You know what the end result going to be. But I don't believe in, I believe in full custody. I don't believe in like a child should like, I don't even too much believe in visitation rights, because unless you have two sensible people in a marriage and they get divorced, and then I think the child should be signed over to one home. I really believe that the state should have nothing to do with this. State, you shouldn't take money from the state. I believe. I think you take money from the church. I would be better to be beholden to a church than to be beholden to a state. There's just so much I could talk about this, but I've seen so much of this type of stuff, and I think it is a point where it's one thing when a regular praise and worship church and its members go sign over their kids to state, or if something happened to them, they have to give over the kids to the state, or the state come in. I know some peers like that, they're very silly, and there's other words I could use. They are going to lose the child instead of just giving the child over to somebody. They hold on to the child until the state come and take the child. Terrible, terrible mistake. You do what Ellen G. White did. You know what she did? She found a parent who could have taken care of her child or children for many years while she was busy all over the country trying to build up the church. And she found a suitable parent for the children that would nurture them and take care of them until she was more settled. And then she took back over the children. Even that, but these people, they'll hold on to the child in a pig pen. And the children is in a rat-infested environment. And then the state steps in and grab the child. And then they're like, oh, pray for me. I'm like, pray for what? Pray for the child. Because what's going to happen often, the child going to get placed into somewhere that the child's going to be abused. You know that almost most of the society's prostitute come from the jail. I say it again. Most of the society or our nation prostitutes come out of the foster care system. Check it out. If not most, a lot of them. This is where pimps pick up their next prostitute, from the foster care system. The state is a destroyer of the young person. So that's why I say the state will sign these kids over to homosexual homes, to devil worshippers, to all kind of weird cretins and individuals that will destroy them. And I know somebody can say, "Oh, I came from a system and I'm well." God bless you, but you're not the majority. So when we look at this, even though the Republicans they're there and they're criticizing, you don't listen to this. This is smoke and mirrors. When they have the power, they never fix the system, because remember, Republicans are not into charity, because they believe that their money is for them and them alone. So they're not into no fixing no charity. They're into basically, I don't want to pay no money. I don't want to fix nothing. Listen, smoke and mirrors. Don't listen to them. A bunch of hypocrites. So you look at this is because again they represent the state, and this is what the state does. It's a secular people. What do you expect secular people to do? They can't live by high morals because they're selfish. So it's important in this type of scenario. As we look at this, we see this is one more of those instances where we can see the clear separation is going on, where there's a separating from morality and God, and the kids are gonna get caught into it. So I believe as a parent, if you're falling apart, I doubt if you'll be listening to me and you're falling apart, but it's possible. But if you're falling apart, find a home for your child. Even if you say temporary, they have 100% custody, with the agreement that if you recover from your situation, then the child becomes yours again. Because if you keep going on a path, if you're on drugs, if you're alcoholic and you're at risk of dying, and you don't know what the future of a child going to be, sign over to either the whole church or to a member of the church or to somebody to find somebody for you who can be good steward of children. But don't just die, or don't make the state come in and grab your child without making a decision while you're sensible. And I think an adoption agency like this should be established just for that purposes. Agency that can just be there as a conduit, independent of the state, putting your kids in all these crazy people home. And so this is what it is. Notice here in Proverbs 14, verse 34, it says, righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. No matter if they say the sin is a civil clause, a civil rights, it is still a reproach to the society. It's not going to get the society better. It's going to get worse. And so it's important to know, as in Isaiah 58, we'll read some of this to close. It says, cry aloud, Isaiah 58, it says, cry aloud and spare not. Lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgression, and the house of Jacob their sin. Yet they seek me daily, and delight to know my ways, as a nation that did righteousness, and forsook not the ordinance of their God. They ask of me the ordinances of justice. They take delight in approaching to God. Wherefore have we fasted, say they, and thou seest not? Wherefore have we afflicted our soul, and thou takest not knowledge? Behold, in the day of your fast you find pleasure in exacting all your laborers. Behold, you fast for strife and debate, to smite with the fist of wickedness. Ye shall not fast as you do this day, to make your voice be heard on high. Is it such a fast that I've chosen, a day for a man to afflict his soul, and to bow down his head like a bulrush, and to spread sackcloth and ashes under him? Wilt thou call this a fast and an acceptable day of the Lord? Is not this the fast that I have chosen, to loose the band of wickedness, to undo the heavy burden, to let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke? Is it not to deal thy bread to the hunger, and that thou bring the poor that is cast out to thy house? When thou seest the naked, that thou cover him, and that thou hide not thyself from thine own flesh. Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thy health spring forth speedily. And thy righteousness shall go before thee. The glory of the Lord shall be thy reward. And so this is what Isaiah the Lord inspired Isaiah to encourage us, that those who are afflicted and needy ought to be taken care of, including these kids that are supposed to be in a loving home, a truly loving home. You can't be loving and immoral. I don't believe it. The more immoral is the more unloving. So this is what the Lord has called us to do. And this is why I think, instead of having these fake charities calling themselves charity while they're taking money from the government, charity really, you just need to take money out of your own pocket. And so I believe there should be a placement service, but not on the dictates of secular people who are creating the problem in the first place with their free sex lifestyle and all the immoral activity and the selfishness that's caused these kids to end up being in charity in the first place. I think this should be done by people who are truly converted. If you're converted, this is what you should do. If you're going to do something like that, I'll back you up or work with you. Or if you want to work with me, I'll start something. So this is what we should do. Let's pray. Our Father who art in heaven, I thank you for your mercies, your love, your continued guidance into the path that we ought to take, especially as we see the degradation of society, the affliction of the children in the society, and the suffering that goes on, and the abuse, and the ultimate destruction of their lives. May you bless us, dear Lord, as we consider well the paths of our feet, and may we take the right path to bless those, dear Lord, that are the least amongst us. This is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for being with me here on Revive Reform Radio. Looking forward to talking to you live again tomorrow morning, where we should talk about natural health. Until then, I pray that you may continue to walk with the King.